So let's first talk about what I think is probably the biggest thing to happen in space flight at least in the like since the space shuttle. We'll just put it that way, and definitely in the United States. We had a crewed vehicle coming home from space. Two humans were in orbit. They were on the International Space Station, and they came home from orbit. And this was a huge, obviously, probably the most important aspect of returning home, or of the DM-2 mission, the demonstration mission 2 for SpaceX and the Crew Dragon capsules, making sure they can bring people home. Because at least on ascent, you have an abort system, right? When you come back in from reentry, you're just bound to the laws of physics. Like there's nothing, there's no like backing out and being like, whoopsie doodle. Like let's retry that. You can't F9 Kerbal Space Program load your quick save. Yeah. So it's definitely, and the forces involved is insane. I did a video kind of going into how you actually deorbit, and I didn't really get too much into it, but one of the things that people don't quite understand is the way that deorbiting works is you basically are just beginning to touch thicker parts of the atmosphere, and then you let the atmosphere scrub off all of your velocity. Because don't forget, these things in orbit are traveling at about 28,000 kilometers an hour, 17,500 miles an hour for those of you metrically impaired. And, it's just absolutely screaming like 10 times faster than a bullet. And you have to remove that energy. It took that whole rocket's worth of energy to get it up to that speed. Now you have to remove it to get it down safe, right? You have to remove energy. And right now it's kinetic energy. It's moving, again, 10 times faster than a bullet. You have to get rid of that kinetic energy. And so what it's doing is it's hitting the atmosphere. The atmosphere is compressing the air in front of the heat shield. When it compresses the air, obviously the air can't get out of the way fast enough, so it slows it down. But also then it's compressing the air. And the air, when it gets compressed, heats up so much that it turns into a plasma. So all it's doing is converting kinetic energy and dissipating is turning it into heat. Just like a brake pad, actually. A brake pad on a car really is doing it's more friction, and the friction turns it into heat, right? That's what brake pads do. They take all that kinetic energy and they remove it by trying to stop it and clamping force and eventually rejecting it as heat. That's like that's what it ends up being, is heat. It's the same thing, only really it's not air friction. It is just compression of the wind stream. And you got to do that. And then, so in doing that, your spacecraft ends up experiencing parts of it like half as hot as the sun. Literally half as hot of the surface of the sun is how hot that heat shield will get, or parts of the plasma and stuff. So yeah, this was a really big deal, obviously. Like this is really putting what would you say, putting the proof where the pudding is, what? Mm-hmm. The proof's in the pudding?
Pedal to the metal.
I don't know.
Period on the sentence.
This is where,
I can hear that.
Yeah, so that was when that was call out that we actually had the 4 main chutes. So basically, once it slows down enough down to terminal velocity, at only about 5,500 meters, they deploy first the 2 drogue chutes. Those will continue to slow it down again, get it from basically supersonic down to subsonic, or probably not supersonic. I think it's already subsonic by the time those deploy. But yeah, then the drogue chutes to rip off basically, and they pull out 4 main. Look at that.
How did they get audio of the splashdown?
Ooh, did they actually have? Let me hear. Hang on. It did sound like it, but you know what I think that is?
Somebody just like dropped something in water behind him for sound effects. They hired like Foley artists for this.
Yeah.
event.
Here come the conspiracy theorists.
Question, actually. I wonder if that was Splashdown, if it was audio from the capsule being broadcast, or if it was simply, it could have been something like where as soon as the mics ramped up, because they had like a noise gate inside the studio, it just happened to be like the sound of like ambient noise in the background. Let's listen again. Man.
It's
because it almost sounds like
a splash.
It does sound like a splashdown. Sorry, those in Discord can't hear it, but it was it sounds like, they're quiet, and so therefore the mics aren't picking up anything. And then as soon as like they're about to talk, all of a sudden the noise gate pops up, and you're hearing like someone like clapping, kind of the ambience of the room. I don't know. Conspiracy theory. But anyway, they made it home safe and were welcomed by tons of Floridian boaters. Did
that
you guys see
just drove me nuts.
I could not believe that.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, some of my friends, I'm telling them about it.
Explain
Mike,
that to me. There were a bunch of people there in boats just waiting.
Yeah, a bunch of just dudes in boats that just started going out there, like right in the middle of everything.
like in the middle of recovery operations, with a spacecraft that just re-entered space and was firing toxic, cancerous, highly explosive fumes as it's re-entering with its hydrazine. Like the things you do not want to breathe, you do not want to be anywhere near. And this thing's just splashing down, and all of a sudden you have just a bunch of Floridians. Like, I like how I'm using Floridians as like a
Florida man, 36, develops cancer.
It's almost like they should have just been like, yeah, go right up to it. Go ahead.
Right. So
Just-
I'm
just-
gonna,
just
I'm gonna
go
try
kiss
and
it.
pull up the part where the people are in boats.
I didn't hear that. Now, didn't they say it sounded like a cat dying or something on the way down, or an animal screaming or something? When they asked him in the press conference, like what it sounded like.
No, they just more said that I think the rocket just was alive. It was less. I think it was more the rocket than. Were they talking about re-entry?
Yeah, they're talking about
But-
reentry. They said it, what the Dragon capsule sounded
Okay.
like.
Okay, so that boat in particular, that's not a recovery vessel. There's only 2 fast boats that get out there.
So they're still inside right now.
They're still inside. And this vehicle,
Yeah, it took a while to get them out.
Literally, the first thing that SpaceX does is they go out there with 2 fast boat. One recovers the parachutes. The other one first goes up to the vehicle and sniffs it to make sure that it doesn't have hypergolic leaking, like hydrazine leaking everywhere. Because again, that's like incredibly toxic. So again, that's another just boat.
Mhm.
You can see the fishing poles on the back. Like,
Oh, that's what that is. Okay.
What?
yeah.
That's madness. I feel like the Coast Guard maybe should be involved here, or like some helicopters flying low with some guns
Like,
pointed at these guys.
look at how close these boats
This
are
is
getting.
America. Come on.
And people are going, well, it's the telephoto lens that make it. No, it's yes, it's some of it. And you got, people with
Oh,
flags
great.
going by
Yeah.
and taking pictures and doing
How
all
many
their
flat
stuff.
earthers are there saying, "Oh, see, we got real life CGI. All right, see, that's how good this is. It's just like the video games."
They know nothing about SpaceX, and they just think something fell out of the sky.
Yeah.
No, here's what happened is they do publish basically where they're going to splash down, and the Coast Guard gives out an audible warning to all of the people in the vicinity saying, hey, there's spacecraft recovery operations. Please do not approach this zone, blah, blah, blah. The only problem is there was not nearly enough support to actually be able to, and this is only about 20 miles or 32 kilometers off the coast of Pensacola, Florida. So definitely within like boating range of fishermen and stuff. So they all kind of knew it was coming. They knew that was the prime landing site. And then once the coordinates were published and they could see the parachutes and stuff, they all just raced out to it. And the Coast Guard really didn't have, I won't say the authority, because they actually can legally board any vessel in the Gulf of Mexico and outside of the 12-mile international waters region. They can still have jurisdiction there. But they just didn't have the crew to enforce it.
I mean, at this point, you send the Navy. Forget the Coast Guard. Like, send an actual, I guess I'm just thinking that because San Diego, but, dude, yeah, we, you got some people that'd be there really quick if that was happening over here.
Right.
Well, all the splashdowns before were Navy, right? Because they had
Mhm.
aircraft carriers. Or...
Yep. And they would be
Was it
in
an
the
aircraft carrier?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Huge old aircraft, mega thing. But that's also because it was in
Yeah.
the middle of the Pacific, and they just
Yeah.
needed that as a point to be able to go recover the vessel.
So Bob and
So-
Doug land. They peek their head out, see all the boats happening. They're like, "Can we go back? Send us back. I'm out."
Well,
It's not what I signed up
The crazy
for.
thing is, again, this isn't about. Well, first off, it's like how frankly self-entitled do you have to be like, I need to be here and take a picture for my Facebook page.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Suddenly, they're gonna crack this whole thing open with their crappy iPhone photo.
Right. Or I don't think it was conspiracy theories. I think it was generally people that were extremely excited to see this, and that's great. Trust me, that's awesome. I don't blame them. if if I knew that you could go see it and you could just boat right up to it, how awesome would that be, right? But at the same time, like, have a little bit of like, don't like, they were
It's
there
Florida,
before the
man.
recovery
Don't
vessel
get your
was
hopes
there.
up.
But it's not just Florida. Like, I feel like that's just, people would do that anywhere, a little bit of that cowboy streak, maybe in the South, streak of like, I'll do whatever I want, maybe like, this is America type of attitude is maybe a little bit more prevalent there. But like, at the same time, like, guys, you're literally interfering potentially with recovery operations. If you happen to go and ding that spacecraft with your boat, say all of a sudden your motor stalls and you no longer have, like, right as you're pulling up, you're reducing the throttle, and all of a sudden your engine dies right when you're about to reverse thrust and prevent yourself from running into this thing. And now you puncture the hull of that, and you could risk drowning 2 astronauts or puncturing, again, the hydrazine tank, and all of a sudden it ruptures and you have noxious fumes, and it could be catastrophic, right?
We all saw Beirut, okay? We all saw what happened.
Oh God.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what they're playing with. So
well,
people
close.
in Florida,
close. It's more noxious than that, but it's not quite as I don't know if it's as explosive as that, but obviously not the same.
I'm just trying to scare them to get them. I'm not being serious.
Yeah. But the boats that approach the vehicle they have soft hulls. They're rigid inflatable craft, for that purpose too, that as they're approaching the boat, if something were to happen, they just gently bump into it like bumper cars. Normal boat hulls, you don't want those anywhere near this thing. They got pointy ends, like they could puncture it. And there's 2 humans, and eventually there'll be 4 humans inside these things. The last thing you want is to have a boater just going up and accidentally interfering and having something happen, and something could be catastrophic for not only for their own safety, but for the safety of those on board, the safety of the people trying to recover these vehicles. Like, this is a whole operation, and you don't have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't.
So
go ahead, Joe.
No, sorry. Were you saying a second ago that the previous splashdowns back in the 60s and 70s, that was like out in the middle of the Pacific?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm guessing we now have a level of accuracy that we didn't have back then.
Yeah, actually, the funny thing is the level of accuracy is, I think, probably relatively similar, because the cool thing is, and I made a video explaining, like how we re-enter and stuff. One of the things that people don't realize is that even through re-entry, the Dragon capsule or any, like, even Apollo and stuff like that, they were guiding their re-entry based on spinning the spacecraft, because what they do is intentionally, like, heat shield, although it's cylindrical or circular, they'll put the center of mass, like, it'll slightly be offset. And when you do that, you can literally almost like create a ramp and create some lift, or at least a lifting vector. And so they can actually help steer it to its point. So either like come out of the atmosphere more if they're, coming in too shallow, dive down like this. If they're coming in too high, steer left and right, basically. A fine amount. And they can tune their reentry down to a very high degree of accuracy. And they could do that through Apollo. But I bet these days they can do it to even a finer degree, just with more advanced computing and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't really know why exactly they just used to splash down in the Pacific, but that's not the case anymore.
It's just it occurred to me after watching it, like, and probably from something that you said, was that there hasn't been a splashdown for what, like 20 years outside of like an accidental one that the Soviets had,
right?
Or the Russians, I guess.
Water landing.
Yeah, water landing. But my point was, like, we haven't done this in so long, and you were just saying that it was usually done like further out in the Pacific, so there's no real precedence for landing so close to land where like somebody on a fishing boat could just go out and do that. Right. So,
well, that's kind of what NASA said.
Maybe it should just be expected. We just never really seen that happen before, because it wasn't in a place where that could happen.
I think, and that's exactly, I think Jim Bridenstine, NASA administrator, said in the post-launch press conference or the post-splashdown press conference, something like, why didn't you guys anticipate this? He's like, honestly, we didn't consider that people wouldn't heed the Coast Guard warning and just circumvent and drive out there themselves. Like, we just didn't think that next time we will have, more security. We'll coordinate that with the Coast Guard, with the Navy, with SpaceX, and including the people, the recovery vessels were strictly even requested not to even to try to like get anyone away, because that was not their job. Their job is to focus on getting the crew home safe. So they're not going to be driving around, hey, get out of here. Like they were busy.
Yeah,
like, they had
they're
a
probably
job
not
to do.
armed, right?
Right. Well, there might be some armed security on the main recovery vessel. But yeah, they're not going to be, that boat's too slow to go out there and wrangle around a bunch of people on quick little, boats. But, oh man. Yeah. I don't know.
It was just kind of embarrassing.
It was.
America. Well, they're back,
Yeah.
and
Well, there's one more. There's one more little story. So remember how I mentioned,
get out of this dark hole we're in.
Well, remember how I said, you don't want to be anywhere near it because there could be toxic fumes. Well, come to find out, that's exactly what happened. The first thing they do, like I said, is they sniff the vehicle basically to make sure that there's no hydrazine leaks. So they get it up on the vessel.
Guys.
And they had already done a sniff test, but once they opened up and were getting ready to actually open the main hatch, they were doing more sniff tests basically and getting kind of into some cracks, because there's the pressure vessel where the people are inside, and then on top of that there's a whole like skirting and kind of this outer shell, right? And so as they were doing the sniff test, they kind of noticed that there's some trace amounts of hydrazine still, and this is, I mean, to be expected-ish. It was double the lower threshold, or the upper threshold, I mean. So it's twice that of acceptable rates. And the reason is, these thrusters are firing. The thrusters are basically punching out of the outer shell. But as they fire, as it re-enters, as wind, blah, 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 it could take some of that gas after they fire it, and it can kind of get it stuck in some of those cracks. And then they could just be stuck in, in those gaps in between there. There's no airflow, like, pushing or circulating or anything. So they really didn't have, like, it's not like it's dangerous, but we're talking about parts, like a few parts per million and a few parts per billion, of this gas. So it's very, very, very low concentration, but out of like huge abundance of caution, they're like, we have to get this down to below our registered threshold. And so what they did is they purged the entire system with nitrogen, and that makes, so even those cavities just got purged with an inert gas. Nitrogen's in our atmosphere, it's inert. And they said next time when they splash down, that might be just one of the first things they do. As the vehicle approaches, as the fast boats approach, they'll likely add a new thing that just purges right away, just to make sure.
I've got a question for you. I've got a why don't they just for you here, an ad-libbed one. Why don't, since they're catching fairings, why don't they try to catch the capsule?
We've talked about this like 3 times on the show.
What? Man, see,
actually, we did that as a why don't they just.
Yeah, we've done that as a why don't they just.
Yeah.
Like literally twice.
I'll go back and watch that. Here, I'll be back. See you guys.
But for that answer, I always thought like it's substantially heavier than a fairing, like 5 times heavier than a fairing, and I just didn't assume it'd be smart to try to catch it. But then Elon later mentioned that they're probably going to start practicing with crew or with cargo, so that they could potentially try to catch it.
Trying to catch the actual Dragon capsule, huh?
Yeah.
Not the crude. The crude one and the weight would slightly be different between the.
I mean, close enough.
But like enough to where it wouldn't matter.
Oh, enough where they could prove it out on cargo and see if it's safe. But again, it's like the whole risk factor. Is that actually going to keep the astronauts safe? What if they land on the edge of the net, tip over,
and it and fall off or something?
Yeah. So they really just, it does not matter. Like, there's a few things that could be more efficient or a little bit quicker turnaround, but like, does it make it safer? Does it really reduce the risk for the people on board and the people recovering? Like, do you also want a highly pressurized toxic propellant thing landing on top of a boat with people on it either? Like, or do you want it to splash down and then go recover it once everything's okay? Yeah. Risk mitigation, it's risk versus reward. And in this case, you're maybe speeding up something that takes half hour. Is that worth all the
Which is
risk?
like lightning quick it seems, in terms of anything. Like, what does it take to get your EVA shoot on? Like 4 hours or something crazy?
Yes, literally. Yeah. So 30 minutes is like bobbing around in the water for 30 minutes before the boat actually picks you up out of the water. That's nothing.
Yeah.
It will take
the bit where they were like sniffing and waiting for the leak to clear, and the 2 guys were still in there, and they kept checking in. I was like, hey, we're just checking, we're doing it. And they're like, yeah,
whatever.
Yeah.
I've been sitting in this thing for 12 hours. It's fine.
Yeah.
Whatever.
But you could imagine, I personally, if I was Bob and Doug, I would be a little bit more alert and just a little bit more like ears perked up if they say there's like, trace amounts of hydrazine, because remember there was that loss of a Dragon capsule that had a made like full blown loss of one, where they're still sitting inside that, kind of trapped in there, just really hoping that there's not an actual leak. But I think but I think their fears were quelmed when when they just explained it and everything. But that's why communication is good, But yeah, it was honestly other than the trace amounts of hydrazine, which really again is still within like a totally normal threshold. It just was too high to really want to open the hatch up yet. Besides that, and then the boaters, flawless, like absolutely flawless. Bob and Doug said multiple times, like, we just can't believe how great this mission went. And it just really felt like we're, basically saying stuff like it feels like we're in the future now,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So huge congrats to SpaceX and NASA, because we've been waiting for this for a long time. And we're just so glad that Bob and Doug are safe and that everything just looks really good. And they're still pushing forward for their first operational mission with Crew 1 already in, I forget now. Did it move to early September? I think it moved to September, but we're still only like a month away.
That's not going to be on
already.
a different Dragon though, right? I mean, they want to reuse this one, but probably not for that mission.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming.
And they will use this one already for Crew 2, which I think we talked about last week, that they changed their mind about reusing them and reusing boosters, and now they're all ready from the demo. Between the time it's like the demo and even before they fly their first one, they've already committed and said, yeah, we're confident about reuse, both with the booster and with the spacecraft, which is awesome.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
But I think a lot of that was. I think a lot of that, by the way, was because NASA's seen SpaceX refurbish the old cargo versions. SpaceX flew almost half of the cargo, the Dragon 1 capsules. 9 out of the 20 that flew were actually refurbished. So SpaceX had plenty of experience showing that they know how to do it and that it's still a safe vehicle and that there was no issues arising from the refurbishment process. So.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this clip from our show. If that's just not enough for you and you want to watch the full episode, you can go to olfpod.com/YT.
And if you want more from us, you can consider becoming a Patreon member. You'll get early access to episodes. You can join our awesome community. You can actually watch us record live and get your name in the credits by going to olfpod.com/Patreon.
So thanks everyone for watching. Check back every Friday for new clips here and new episodes on the main channel.
Thanks, everybody.